If you ever had a rainy day or a snow day or even a heat advisory keeping you inside, then you know the struggle of indoor recess. It can feel chaotic if you're not prepared, but I got you covered. In this video, I'll share simple, engaging, easy to manage indoor recess ideas to keep your preschoolers happy while keeping your classroom under control. Stay tuned. Personally, I kind of like indoor recess a little bit better than outdoor recess, and it's simply because I think you can control the atmosphere a little bit better with indoor recess. And also because I think that it's just an accepted rule that, over the top rambunctious behavior is not permitted in the classroom where it becomes dangerous to them and others. And you get to give them a choice of the activities that you want to have going on in your classroom at the time. And you can give them those choices within boundaries that you set. But I do think that if you plan thoroughly, indoor recess can be a great idea, especially when those particular seasons come around and you are not able to get outside as much as you would like or the kids would like. So I think it's nice to have backup plans because you never know also if something unexpected comes along and you're not able to go out, even if it has nothing to do with the weather. And you can still do movement activities during indoor recess, even if you do have to modify them because of the fact that you're in the classroom and maybe you don't have as much space to work with as you do outside, but it's still possible. And before I get into the ideas that I want to share with you about indoor recess, I do want to say that a good fail-safe thing that I had always done in my classroom, or one of the things that I had done in my classroom, was to extend center time. And this usually came about like after nap time and they had that second recess time. And if I knew that we weren't going outside, then I could make, center times available to them. Maybe I wouldn't have all the centers open as I normally would during the first center time, but I think that's a great option, especially if you're limited in actual movement space in your classroom, because sometimes they don't even want to leave it the first time you have it open during the day anyway. So it's an extra treat that they get to go back into centers if outside is not available to them. However, like I said, I didn't normally open all of the centers. I would usually keep the more chaotic ones closed, or maybe have one of them open. What I know is when I did it, I tried to cut down on as much of the chaos, especially because it's right before they leave. And sometimes you don't always get the cooperation of cleaning up like you do during the regular part of the day when it's time for them to go. And there are other opportunities or other things that you could extend as well. Like maybe you could extend your music and movement time. Maybe you can extend any part of the day, like your art time. So you have extra time that you can extend some of those activities that they enjoy anyway. So maybe the first circle time, you can extend it a little bit longer because you know that they're not going outside. Art time, you can extend it a little bit longer because you know that, and music and movement and things like that. So they can still have like that extra time. And this is really only if they are engaged in what you're doing. You don't want to extend anything that they're not engaged in. But if they are, then what's the problem since they're not going outside anyway? So let's get into the first group of ideas that I wanted to share with you for indoor recess. And the first group is physical movement activities. And you can choose to use that part of the time any way you want. So for instance, the ideas that I am going to present to you, you don't have to use them the whole extended time, the whole recess time. You could start off with it, or you can, end with it so that you're gathering the children together, but you don't have to feel obligated to do any of these things the whole recess time. So the first idea is the freeze dance, which is always popular, and you can modify these in any way that you want. You can add things, you can do it differently according to the music choice, according to, you know, if there's a theme that you're working on during that week, whatever you want. You don't have to do the same kind of freeze dance unless they enjoy it that way, but you don't have to do it. You can always add a little extra something into the activity. Another activity to do is Simon Says. So again, that's why I say that you don't have to use these things or try to do them the whole recess time, but you can, you know, again, start that time with an activity like this, or in that time with an activity like this. That's sort of like a transition. Another idea is to make an obstacle course in the classroom, and this can be used with chairs. You can use pillows, maybe tape on the floor. One thing that one of the classes that I worked in loved, they loved the bear hunt song. So I would create different props to use around the classroom to represent the mud and the grass and this and that and the other, and they would act out the going on a bear hunt song. So, and that was like the way I made it in the classroom. It was an obstacle course in a way. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be maybe based on a story. One story that pops into my head is the gingerbread boy. Like, you can make an obstacle course, you know, using that story or something like that. So I think it's a great way to get them moving in a more structured way in the classroom, and it could definitely be fun for them. And another physical movement activity could be like scarf play. Scarf play with some music, maybe bean bags or something like that, where they can put the bag on their head or on their shoulder or on their stomach or something like that, and then, you know, play some music and give them some directives of, you know, what you want them to do. Make it fun, because remember, you're replacing outside time. You want to approach everything with enthusiasm, because they're probably most likely going to be disappointed that they can't go outside. So make sure you are bringing the enthusiasm. And with these ideas, just adjust them to the size of your classroom, or the things that you have in your classroom, whether you have like pillars in your classroom or whatever. Just adjust the activity to those different factors. The next idea for indoor recess is to have like creative center play. And this could be a spin on regular centers. So for instance, instead of just letting them go into the block area to build whatever, maybe you want to challenge them. Make it like some type of STEM challenge or something like that, or just a regular challenge where you are encouraging them to build certain things, or maybe even working together to create something, so that it's kind of novel to them. So it's not just the same old that they're doing because they can't go outside. Maybe simple art activities or sensory activities that you can do, because remember, you will know whether you're, for the most part, you will know whether you're going outside or not. So these are things that you're not just trying to come up with out of the blue. You would have thought about what types of things you would include in your center area or in your sensory table, or what type of art you would like to do. And sometimes just putting things on the table, which I've done before lots of times, and then letting them create out of scraps of paper, tissue paper, glue, watercolors, or boxes, egg cartons, felt, just giving them things and then seeing what they come up with, building, you know, random things, sculptures and stuff like that. Things that they don't have to necessarily follow a theme or anything, they can just create. Or something that works wonders is if you bring out things that they haven't seen yet, and you know, of course, you introduce it and stuff like that. Or there may be some toys that you only take out for when it's indoor play, because maybe it takes up too much space, you know, if it's out there during the whole course of the year or the day. So for instance, in one of my classrooms, we had a parent donated this wood sculpture. It was like a tree house. It was really huge, and it just took up so much space in our classroom. We were able to unassemble it, or most of it, and put it in the cabinet. And then during those rainy days or snowy days, we take it out and assemble it, and then they get to play with it then and there. Or if it was somehow related to a theme, we would bring it out. But for the most part, you know, it was an indoor recess kind of toy that they played with. And because the rainy days didn't happen so often, every time they saw it, it was like a brand new toy. So it was, again, novel, and they were really engaged in it. So the next idea for indoor recess is group games. And again, this is something where you don't have to necessarily do the whole recess time unless they're interested in it or really engaged in it. Then, you know, maybe you can have this as part of one of your center choices. But group games is a great way to have small groups of children doing something. And of course, like, it helps if it's something that they are familiar with, so you're not having to explain the rules of the game and all that stuff. You want to make sure that you are reading the room. Like, if they are able to do the game independently as a group, then that's something that, you know, you can offer as an opportunity for them to play together. If your children are not there yet, you may want to hold off on it. But something like some of the children in one of the classes that I worked with, they loved playing this game called Snail's Pace, and it was a board game for, I believe it was 6 children, so 6 children could play, or up to 6 children could play. You can do like card games, something like Go Fish or High Low, or Dominoes is a great game to play because they get to match the dots. And also, my children loved Connect 4. And again, once you teach these things to them, they can run the game themselves. Another one was Uno. Once they get the gist of it, they understand it, they can do it themselves. Another group game could be using the parachute and maybe putting a balloon and having them do, and you can make up so many different types of games using the parachute. And I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of resources and websites you can find that have a lot of activities geared around using the parachute. So that is definitely a fun thing. And of course, if you have the space for it. They come in different sizes, but usually the ones that are probably most used are the really large ones, but they do have smaller ones. So if your school does have one of those smaller ones, it could be, you know, something that you try in your classroom one time. Okay, so those were some ideas that you could definitely try to implement in your classroom, which I think all of them are ideas that your children will enjoy. But I don't want to leave it at that without some management tips. So one thing to do is to set clear expectations, and those expectations, make them around safety, make them around volume, because they are inside and they're having recess. They may get lost in the fact that, you know, they're having recess, so they're not really watching their volume or being as safe as they would be any other part of the day. So make sure you set those expectations before you start, and that could save a lot of time and energy policing the classroom. Another thing that helps is giving them choices. So first, you have what you want out. So whether you have things on the tables, you can set parameters around how many people can be in the area, just like you do with center time. And this is if you are not necessarily using centers, because if you are using centers, then they should know how many children are allowed in a particular area. But if, for instance, you are doing something like your, 4 groups of tables and one area, for instance, then you can let them know how many people are at each table, and so on and so forth. And another thing to do is to rotate the activities. So maybe you want to put on a timer just so the children have a choice to go into another area so that they don't feel like they're missing out on something else just because, you know, there are too many people at one area. Have it so that they can rotate around, even if it's a couple times. And that will definitely cut down on boredom, because we know that when and if they get bored, they will make their own fun. Having that in the back of your mind and how much time you're going to give them in each area and so on. And then again, when you are setting your expectations, that would be something that you would mention, you know, when the timer goes off, you're going to move to a different area. They need the physical and active play, but they can still have fun and be active even during indoor recess. And then hopefully the next day they'll be able to go outside. So if you found these ideas helpful, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell so that you know when the next video has been posted. And until the next one, I'll see you soon. Bye.